A stunning announcement today affecting Maine's political landscape.
Representative Jared Golden announced he is not seeking re-election after serving 8 years in Congress.
Golden wrote an op-ed in the Bangor Daily News detailing his reasons for not running again. Golden says, quote, "I am forever grateful for the honor of serving my constituents in Congress and proud of what I've accomplished for Maine. But recently it became clear that now is the right time to step away from elected office," unquote.
Golden adds that if he were to run, he believes he would have won. Golden cites, quote, "increasing incivility and plain nastiness" for his departure, saying recent events of political violence made him reassess frequent threats against him and his family. Golden says that includes an incident that had his family spending a Thanksgiving in a hotel room after they received a threat.
Golden also mentioned how the current government shutdown has shown just how broken Congress has become for both parties.
Now, State Auditor Matt Dunlap, who is challenging Golden for the Democratic nomination in the 2nd District, released a statement this afternoon on Golden's decision. Dunlap says, quote, "I want to thank Jared Golden for his military service and years in public office. We may have disagreed on issues, but I believe he is a good person, husband, and father. As I said when I announced, the voters deserve a representative who will fight for a people's agenda, affordable health care, affordable housing, and living wages. They also deserve a candidate who will show up, someone who will be available, someone who will listen."
Former Governor Paul LePage, who's running for the Republican nomination in the 2nd Congressional District, also reacting to Golden not seeking re-election, saying, quote, "This race has always been about fighting for rural Maine. As governor, I spent 8 years helping create jobs and making Maine more prosperous. I'm running for Congress to make sure that working Maine families have a voice in Washington, D.C. This fight is just beginning."